Good afternoon. National Assembly for Wales is now in session. And before we start this afternoon, I'm sure members would join me in welcoming the Speaker of the Republic of Georgia, who's brought a delegation of parliamentarians to see how things work here. So I'm sure they'll have a very enjoyable afternoon. And now we move to the first item on the agenda, which is questions to the First Minister. And question one is Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What is the Welsh Government doing to support local high streets?
Yes, we're supporting our high streets through a range of initiatives, including the £100 million Vibrant and Viable Places programme, through business improvement districts, through town centre partnerships, funding and recyclable loans. And a national high street campaign was held last month, showcasing events and activities the length and breadth of the nation.
Thank you, First Minister. Proposals by Powys County Council to introduce car parking charges in some towns in Brecon and Radnorshire has caused a great alarm to local traders. The proposals also are to introduce car parking charges in residence car parks that were provided historically to improve road safety and to improve congestion in some of our market towns. Your government's own report says that councils should carry out independent impact assessments to be able to be sure that the introduction of charges or the rate of charging is not detrimental to local high streets. There is no evidence that Powys County Council has done that. Would you urge Powys County Council to think very carefully on the effects of some of our market towns like Talgarth before they introduce these charges?
Well, where parking charges are to be introduced, perhaps for the first time, I think it's important that a full assessment is made before any such charges are proposed. If the member tells me that has not been done, then of course I'd encourage Powys, as I would encourage any other council, to consult as widely as possible and to carry out an assessment of what impact there may be on a town centre before taking further action.
Jenny Rathbone.
Will the First Minister join me in congratulating Cardiff Council with the vigour that it has been pursuing the redevelopment of the Malva shopping centre in Llanedin, which includes the best butcher in Cardiff, but which was abandoned by the previous administration, and that people locally are really enthusiastic about the way in which this is happening because they recognise it is the centre of their local community.
Well, of course, this is not a project that the Welsh Government is involved in. It's been driven forward by the City of Cardiff. I'm sure it'll be very much welcomed by local people to see a shopping centre that perhaps has seen better days in terms of its fabric be transformed in order to provide a shopping centre that people can be proud of in Llanedin and the surrounding area.
Paul Davies.
Brif Weinidog, mae'n 2 blynedd a hanner ers i'r Pwyllgor Busnes a Menter gyhoeddi ei adroddiad ar adfywio canol trefi. A fel eich chi'n gwybod, gwnaeth y Pwyllgor 1 o argymhellion a oedd i gyd wedi ei dderbyn yn llawn mewn egwyddor gan eich llywodraeth. Yn yr ymgyrchiadau, gallwch chi roi'r wybodaeth diweddaraf i ni ynghylch pa waith sydd wedi wneud gan eich llywodraeth chi ers cyhoeddi'r adroddiad, a hefyd gallwch chi ddweud wrthon ni pa argymhellion sydd bellach wedi cael ei weithredu'n llawn gan eich llywodraeth chi.
Ni wedi symud ymlaen gyda Vibrant and Viable Places, ni wedi symud ymlaen gyda'r cronfa i daclo tlodi, ni wedi symud ymlaen gyda ardaloedd gwella busnes, gyda partneriaethau i ganol trefi, gyda gynllun benthygiadau i ganol trefi, ac wrth gwrs gyda'r ymgyrch i gefnogi ein stryd fawr. Ar ben hwnna, wrth gwrs, ni wedi bod yn gefnogol iawn ynglŷn â'r trethi busnes.
Rhina Biowydd.
Diolch Llywydd, fel dwedodd yr aelod dros y Frycheiniog a Maes Yfed, mae parcio yn fater pwysig pan mae'n dod at ystyriaethau pobl o ran defnyddio'r stryd fawr. Gai ofyn pa asesiad mae'r Llywodraeth wedi wneud o'r ymarferoldeb o gyflwyno rhaglen genedlaethol fydda yn hyrwyddo cyflwyno parcio am ddim am gyfnod byr penodol mewn trefi mwyn i gwneud un haws i bobl ddefnyddio y stryd fawr?
Wel, wrth gwrs, bydd rhaid talu am hwnna yn gynolog, ond mae rhai awdurdod lleol yn wneud hwn yn barod pen y bont yn un, er enghraifft, lle mae'n bosib i barcio rai rannau o'r wythnos sydd wedi bod yn help mawr i'r dre, ac wrth gwrs fi'n gwybod bod awdurdodau eraill wedi ystyried yr un peth.
We now move to question 2. John Griffiths.
Will the First Minister make a statement on economic development in South East Wales?
Yes, we're continuing to focus on a range of priorities to encourage economic development, and of course we are delivering a wide range of actions that are supporting jobs, for example, through the provision of business support through Business Wales, through ICT support and transport infrastructure improvements.
First Minister, Welsh Government does indeed have a range of strategies and policies in place to develop our economy and support spend in our local economies. Unfortunately, it seems to me that the UK Tory government is pulling in the opposite direction. And as an example of this, some 167,000 working families in Wales will lose out as a result of the proposed changes to the tax credit system. The Institute of Fiscal Studies estimate that the net loss per family of those families will be some £550 per year. Will you agree with me that there is real cause for concern and anger regarding the effect on the individuals, the families and communities, and the amount of money that this will suck out of our local economies here in Wales? And would you further agree that this is a crystal clear example of the double-speak and hypocrisy of the UK Tories' supposed concern for a one-nation policy and strategy?
The reality of the situation is that the economic difficulties that the world had to cope with beyond 2007 were caused by irresponsible financiers. And yet they are getting away scot-free. Absolutely nothing is being attached to them, no responsibility for them at all. It is the low-paid who are carrying the burden. Why do away with tax credits for those who are working? Why discourage people from working as the Tories have done? There are some families who will lose up to £1,000 a year. The letters, we understand, will go out before Christmas, and the impact will come in April next year. It's another example of the Tories targeting the low-paid, hard-working people of this country.
Mohammed Ashgar.
Officer, I'm very surprised to hear John Griffith talking about poverty. What you have done in the last 17 years here in this place, haven't done anything to improve the economy. Access to finance is vital if business in South East Wales are to grow and thrive, First Minister. Will the First Minister update the Assembly on progress towards setting up a development bank for Wales? And does he agree with me that Finance Wales is not fit for purpose and should be abolished?
Well, as the Economy Minister has said, there's an announcement during the course of the autumn in terms of how this moves forward.
We now move to questions from the party leaders, and first this afternoon we have the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Liam Wood.
Diolch Llywydd. First Minister, yesterday Betsy Cadwaladr Health Board's consultation on the future of maternity services in the North closed. What is the preferred option of the Labour Welsh Government for maternity services in the North?
For safe services, it's a matter for the board, of course, and we wait to see what the results of the consultation are. It would be wrong to prejudge that.
First Minister, the preferred option of the Health Board involves a downgrade at Glan-Clwyd, and we don't know what your preferred option is. How is your aspiration to open a neonatal intensive care centre at Glan-Clwyd affected by the removal of consultant-led maternity services at that hospital? You're taking consultants away before bringing back a service that you promised would return. Isn't this a reflection, First Minister, of the mess that is happening on your watch and of your making?
Well, firstly, the consultation has just closed. No decisions have been made, as the Leader of Plaid Cymru knows. The Surnic will go to Glan-Clwyd. It was never the intention that the Surnic would simply be a reflection of the current department. We all know what the problems of the current department are. They've been made very public. The Surnic is a wholly new operation in that regard, and the Surnic is moving forward. I've been in discussions with the Health Board in the course of the past week, and I'm satisfied with the progress that's being made.
Let's not forget, First Minister, and you've already mentioned this, that maternity services are deemed unsafe in the North, and it's this Labour government, under your watch, that has overseen the deterioration of those services over many years. You knew years ago that there were specific issues around recruitment at Glan-Clwyd. Why is it that you prefer downgrading to upskilling? Why is it that you prefer the withdrawal of services rather than planning for their future? I'll ask again, First Minister, what is your vision for maternity services in the north of our country, or don't you have a vision?
Surnic will go there. We want safe services. The consultation has just closed. There would be no point having a consultation if I was to say to Lead Plaid Cymru now, well, there's a preferred view, because the reality is the consultation has just closed. There were some on her benches who urged us on these benches to disregard the difficult reports into the maternity department there and say that somehow it was nothing to do with the well-documented problems, interaction between the staff and the problems that have been caused as a result of that. We have taken action, the Health Board has taken action in order to resolve the situation. And once again, I reiterate that the CERNIC will go to the Glan-Clwyd site. That work is ongoing, and that will be something that I know her party supports as well, the CERNIC, and I know that they support the CERNIC going to Glan-Clwyd, and I'm sure that she will join me in welcoming the fact that that progress is being made on delivering the CERNIC at Glan-Clwyd as a new department, as was always planned, that will serve all of the people of the north of Wales.
We now move to the Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, are you able to tell us how many local education authorities in Wales are currently in special measures?
For what?
Well, I had hoped, First Minister, that you'd be better
The answer
briefed.
is none, overall.
I had hoped that you would be better briefed, First Minister, after it was very apparent that your Education Minister had absolutely no idea when he was asked at the Education and Children and Young People's Committee last week. But it's not just education authorities that are in need of help from your government. Estin's most recent annual report shows that overall there has been a decline in the standards in Welsh primary schools. Perhaps you might be able to tell us what plans you have to improve standards for our youngest school pupils.
Well, she didn't ask me about education. She should have phrased the question properly, but she asked the question about standards. National literacy and numeracy framework. Well, the answer is 4, as it happens. The answer is 4, as it happens. But the situation is that we have the national I can't be blamed for the way questions are asked. The national literacy and numeracy framework is in place. We're seeing literacy levels improve, numeracy levels improve. We're seeing new schools being built across Wales, and it isn't happening in England, of course. It didn't happen when the Lib Dems were in government. We're seeing GCSE results improve. We're seeing Schools Challenge Cymru improving our secondary schools, and we're seeing them improve rapidly in most cases. Education is moving forward in Wales at a good pace, and we are grateful to all those who've been involved in seeing the improvements that we have seen.
I'm not quite sure, First Minister, which bit of the Estin's report you didn't understand. Their conclusion is that last year, standards in our primary schools overall across Wales declined. And surely you cannot be happy with such a report from your own inspector. Now, one thing that I am pleased about is that there has been a narrowing in the gap between pupils on free school meals and those who aren't at Key Stage 4. However, another thing that your Education Minister had no clue about last week is that the government's own report into this said that the improvements are balanced against proportionately fewer free school meals pupils being entered into core GCSE subjects in the first place. In fact, 70% of those pupils who are not entered for science GCSEs are eligible for free schools meals. Would you do what the Education Minister was unable to do last week? Acknowledge that that is the work of your government, the conclusions of your own government's report, and demonstrate what your government is doing to understand why fewer children on free school meals are being entered for core GCSEs than other peers in their classes?
Well, first of all, historically, of course, we've always entered a higher proportion of our students for GCSEs than was the case in England, and much more than was the case in Northern Ireland, which affected their results, of course. What they were doing was not entering pupils that they thought were marginal in terms of whether they'd be successful, and that skewed their success rates. You can see the figures for yourself if you want. That's what was happening. Now, I don't want to see that happening in Wales. I would encourage schools to enter students so that they have the opportunity to get their GCSEs. I would not encourage schools, obviously, just to say, well, sorry, you can't even try in the first place, because that would affect the figures, even though that's exactly what's happened in England and in Northern Ireland. I ask her again to consider the fact that we have seen many changes to the better in education in Wales, whether it is through the literacy and numeracy framework, the consortia that have overcome the weaknesses of local authorities in many, many areas, the fact that GCSE results have improved, the fact that we see schools being built all across Wales. That's something that isn't happening in England. We are more than proud of what we have delivered for education in Wales, particularly through schemes like Schools Challenge Cymru that have helped those, and the People Deprivation Grant. I give her and her party credit for that have helped so many to get the opportunities that they deserve.
We now move to Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Arty-Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, I make a declaration of interest as I'm a partner in an agricultural business that operates under the Common Agricultural Policy rules and support payments. First Minister, many members went outside this building this afternoon to stand shoulder to shoulder with NFU members who were here with their campaign about the clock is running and time is running out to save our agricultural industry. You have the ability to get support payments into agricultural businesses, the length and breadth of Wales. Can you confirm exactly what the government's timetable for delivery is of support payments in what is a critical year where commodity prices have been so low?
Yes, our aim is, of course, to make payments as early as possible. The window opens on the 1st of December. Now, I know the calls have been made to pay, or at least part pay, earlier. I can tell the Leader of the Opposition that the EU Council of Farm Ministers did approve Commission proposals to relax some controls before advance payments can be made from the 16th of October. They don't quite go far enough yet to allow us to utilise the provision. The rules concerning on-the-spot controls have been relaxed, that much is true, but all administrative checks and controls must be completed before any advance payments are released. But, as we have always done, we will continue to pay at the earliest possible opportunity, and Welsh farmers know that that's something that they've been able to rely on in the past.
What is vitally important, because it's a new scheme this year, is that the money hits bank accounts as soon as possible. There is a contradiction in what you've said today, in that the Deputy Minister has ruled out categorically any early payment under the rules that do allow for that payment to commence from October onwards. There has been speculation, and the Deputy Minister has alluded to this, of part payments, and in a written response to my colleague Paul Davis, an indication of 50% part payment being made by the Welsh Government. I notice a Welsh Government spokesman today is saying that's between 70 and 80% now is the Welsh Government's aim, and the balance to be paid by the end of June next year. I hope you can understand from the points that I've put to you why many farmers and representatives of farmers, the length and breadth of Wales, are somewhat confused as to the progress Welsh Government is making in implementing the new scheme. Can you clear up once and for all how much of a payment will be made from December the 1st, assuming that the Deputy Minister's assertion is correct, that you will not exercise the early payment criteria, and how soon will you be making the balance of payments, because the end of June is the end date when you'll be able to do that?
Well, we will look to pay as much as we can on the 1st of December and to pay as much of the balance as possible, all of it actually, before June. At this stage, it's difficult to give an exact figure. It is a new system, that's right. We're moving, of course, to an area-based payments system. Our understanding is that no other nation in the UK is paying in October either. So clearly there are issues that affect all of us and make it difficult to pay early, but the intention is, of course, to pay as much as possible, as soon as possible after the 1st of December.
Well, I'd be grateful if a statement or some reassurance could come forward at the earliest opportunity to confirm how much that part payment would be, and I'm sure many farm businesses would as well, because it is critical in their planning, given commodity prices are so low, First Minister. But one plank that does support farm businesses is the Rural Development Plan. There is some confusion over its implementation, but in particular, one of the calls that have come from the farming unions is for a small capital grant scheme to be made available, so that projects can be undertaken on farms which wouldn't involve a spend of £40,000 or above, which is the current criteria. Will you commit to the government looking into creating a small capital grant scheme that not only just benefits farms, but also benefits many rural businesses who supply the services to those farms, and is eligible under the Rural Development Plan with the schemes that you could bring forward?
The scheme that the Leader of the Opposition is outlining sounds very much like Farming Connect, and the way that's operated for some years. I mean, he mentions capital payments. I mean, with the Rural Development Plan, the Rural Development Plan has farming at its core, but it also includes other rural businesses as well. What I can say to him is, of course, we're prepared to be flexible to see how effective any particular scheme as part of the Rural Development Plan can be. He and I will both know that the challenge that's always been there, certainly for the past 15, 16 years for farming, is sustainability and being able to exist as businesses and to increase their income in the future. Sometimes that means diversification, sometimes it means looking at the way that they husband their animals, looking at particular breeds, looking at particular fat content, particularly with regard to lambs, and of course there are a number of issues about looking at whether we can increase the size of mountain lambs using Suffolk textile tups. I'm going back to rural affairs days now, as you can see. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we will look at any scheme that will be of assistance and will be effective in helping farming to become more sustainable in the future.
We now move back to questions on the paper, and question 3 is Keith Davis.
Diolch Llywydd. Prif Weinidog, pa gefnogaeth mae Llywodraeth Cymru yn ei roi i ganolfannau Cymraeg i oedolion?
Wel, ni'n ariannu'r sector tua 10 miliwn o bunnoedd pob blwyddyn. Mae gwaith ar y gweithlu a drefnu'r sector a fydd yn cael ei arwain a'i ariannu drwy'r ganolfan dysgu Cymraeg Genedlaethol o Awst 2016. Ar ben hyn, ni wedi buddsoddi 2.5 miliwn o arian cyfalaf mewn canolfannau iaith i ddarparu lleoliadau bobl ddysgu a defnyddio'r Gymraeg.
Fel y gwyddoch Prif Weinidog, mae canolfan y lle yn Llanelli yn cynnig cyfleoedd cymdeithasol i bobl ifanc. A fydde'r Llywodraeth yn barod i edrych ar y reolau fel bod mentre cymdeithasol fel Clwb y Bont ym Montepridd a canolfan Soar yn Merthyr yn gallu derbyn arian i wneud yr un peth am y lle yn wneud yn Llanelli.
Wel, ni moyn wrth gwrs sicrhau bod y mwy o lefydd fel y lle yn agor ar draws Cymru. Ni moyn sicrhau bod yn gallu mynd i lefydd lle mae'r Gymraeg yn cael ei ystyried fel iaith arferol. A nid bod yn cael ei ystyried fel rhywbeth anarferol. A mae'n rai rhan o Gymru, wrth gwrs, ni'n gwybod bod hwnna yn wir. Wedi bod i'r lle, yn Llanelli, un o'r pethau oedd bol yn gweud wrth fi fanna oedd bod wedi bod yn help mawr ynglyn â chefnogi a hybu bobl ifanc i ddefnyddio'r Gymraeg mewn lleoliad lle mae'r Gymraeg yn hollol arferol i ddefnyddio. A felly ni'n edrych mlaen i weld mwy o'r canolfannau hyn yn agor ar draws Cymru.
Susie Davis.
Diolch yn fawr. Allai ofyn i chi, Prif Weinidog, am y llefydd yng Nghymru lle di Cymraeg ddim yn cael ei iwsio'n arferol. Sut ych chi'n sicrhau bod pob canolfan mewn lle cywir i ddarparu ymyriad mwy o priodol ym mhob cymuned benodol yn hytrach na cael ei lleoli i fod yn gyflaes i'r sefydliadau academaidd eu hunain?
Wel, mae Llanelli yn un lle, wrth gwrs. Ni'n ystyried ceisiadau eraill ynglyn â Chyfyrddin. Enghraifft hefyd. Na ni mo'n sicrhau bod y canolfannau ar gael mewn rhan o Gymru lle mae'r Gymraeg yn cael ei ddefnyddio ar yr hewl, a rhan o Gymru lle does dim Cymraeg yn cael ei ddefnyddio ar yr hewl. Yn y nod yw sicrhau bod yna un lle lle mae bobl gallu mynd yn wedi bobl ifanc lle maen nhw'n gallu defnyddio'r Gymraeg fel iaith hollol naturiol mewn man a wrth gwrs ymfalchio yn y ffaith bod nhw'n gallu defnyddio'r iaith.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd, ac dwi'n gosawu gweithgaredda yn llefydd megis y lle yn Llanelli ac y gofiad swyddogol yr atom cyn bo hir yn Gyfyrddin hefyd. Ond y troi at yr endid cenedlaethol ych chi wedi sefydlu y gyfer dysgu Cymraeg i oedolion, fedrwch chi cadarnhau bod yna gyhifio bon blwyddyn wrth lawnsio a gweithredu'r endid hwnna, bod y resymoli oedd chi wedi addo eto ddim wedi digwydd, a bod yna oedi wedi bod yn y system, a pa hyder sydd gyda chi nawr bod pawb yn mynd i cydweithio mewn gweledigaeth gytun ar gyfer dysgu Cymraeg i oedolion?
Wel, dwi'n gwybod bod yna fath o oedi wedi digwydd fan hyn. Ar ail ar 10 o fai, nath y gweinidog wrth gwrs i dweud bod Prifysgol y Dryndod Dewi Sant wedi bod yn llwyddiannus ynglyn â cael grant mwyn maen nhw'n gallu sefydlu y ganolfan dysgu Cymraeg Genedlaethol. A mae'r gwaith yna yn dal i barhau gyda nhw a'n swyddogion ni. Mae gyda ni wrth gwrs y canolfannau Cymraeg i oedolion hefyd, sydd wedi gwneud gwaith da ers 2006. A hefyd wrth gwrs, ni moyn sicrhau bod y canolfannau iaith yn cael grantiau cyfalaf yn y pen draw hefyd. So felly mae'r gwaith yn dal i fwrw ymlaen i ddefnyddio'r term hwnna, ynglyn â sicrhau bod yr endid yn cael ei sefydlu, a hefyd wrth gwrs i sicrhau bod y gwaith sy'n mynd i cael ei wneud gan Dryndod Dewi Sant yn mynd ymlaen mewn ffordd priodol.
Question 4, Mark Isherwood.
How does the Welsh Government maximise the effect of Welsh heritage on the economy?
Well, we know that the heritage that we have contributes greatly to our national brand, and we know that translates into jobs and wealth.
Thank you. Well, Of course, you're correct. And Welsh heritage can have a major impact on the economy on North East Wales, provided it involves organisations ranging from Llangollen Railway to Greenfield Valley Heritage Park to Brumbo Heritage Group in designing the visitor offer. I've been asked by Brumbo Heritage Group to extend an invitation to you to visit them and look at the great work they're doing. I hope you'll respond affirmatively, but look forward to your answer.
I will certainly try to do that, and I will look at my diary to see if I can visit in the near future.
First Minister, many countries and parts of Europe have a levy on hotel rooms, for example, in order to fund and promote the tourist economy, which is so important and could be so valuable to Wales. In order for us to do that, of course, we'd have to have devolution of fiscal powers, which of course goes against the judgment in the Asbestos Wales bill more recently. Is the issue of the devolution of fiscal powers, as recommended in command paper in 2014, something that you'll be raising with the Secretary of State for Wales as part of the Wales bill and the proposed new devolution settlement?
Well, it's certainly right to say that there will be the ability for Welsh Government to be able to raise, or to create new taxes, but only with the agreement of the UK Government. We're not at that stage yet. We need some progress on fair funding first. We look forward to that happening as part of the spending review. We've been promised it for a long time. We haven't seen it delivered as yet. Once we understand what our financial footing is, then of course further consideration can be given to what further revenue-raising powers would be appropriate.
Alan Lloyd-Jones.
O gofio penderfyniad y Llywodraeth i ddileu cymal ac awgrym adroddiad Dr Hayden Edwards ar ran y Llywodraeth ei hun i greu 3 corff rhanbarthol i gefnogi amgueddfeydd lleol. Sut mae'r Llywodraeth yn bwriadu cynnal a datblygu amgueddfeydd lleol yng Nghymru i'r dyfodol o gofio ei rôl bwysig o fewn y diwydiant twristiaeth?
Wel, ni'n gwybod faint mor bwysig yw amgueddfeydd lleol. Ni'n gwybod bod nhw'n gallu creu storiau i ymwelwyr sydd ddim yn cael ei roi gyda amgueddfeydd mawr. Mae yna brosiect, wrth gwrs, ni'n ariannu ar hyn o bryd, sef prosiect twristiaeth etifeddiaeth. Hwna'n rhywbeth, wrth gwrs, sy'n mynd i helpu ynglyn ag etifeddiaeth yng Nghymru. Ac, wrth gwrs, sicrhau bod ni'n gallu cefnogi'r cofebion hefyd yng Nghymru mwyn bod ni'n gallu sicrhau bod nhw mewn cyflwr da. So ni wedi bod yn gweithio'n agos gyda amgueddfeydd mwyn sicrhau bod nhw mewn sefyllfa lle maen nhw'n gallu gwasanaethu'r gymuned leol yn y pen draw.
William Powell.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, the most recent Visit Wales surveys indicate that castles and historic attractions have overtaken beaches in terms of being the -- 1 destination here in Wales. And in this context, and given the fact that an update to the Cultural Tourism Action Plan 2012 to 15 is soon to be available to us, what more can the Welsh Government do to support cultural and heritage tourism to such iconic venues as Carrick-Cenin, Harlech and indeed Strata, Florida, given that recent indications are that they are somewhat underperforming and have been under-promoted despite their intrinsic beauty?
Well, first of all, we have the Museum Accreditation Scheme that helps to raise standards within museums as well. In terms of cultural tourism and cultural heritage, we have the Heritage Tourism Projects funded by EU and Welsh Government. The idea is to improve visitor facilities and interpretation at monuments. We know, for example, that our castles are hugely important in terms of their visitor numbers. Conwy comes at the top, followed closely by Carnarvon. Carrick-Cenin, a place I know very, very well. Unfortunately, doesn't feature in the top 10, but is nevertheless somewhere I'd encourage people to visit. We know that having the castle there is one thing, having the interpretation is another. When I went to Harlech Castle, back in, I think it was July, I was impressed by what was being done there to help visitors to understand the way the castle operated and to interpret the lives of the people within the castle. So having those facilities, multimedia facilities, is absolutely crucial to develop people's understanding of what the castles once did.
Question 5, Tia Griffith.
Diolch, Llywydd. Awn ni y Prif Weinidog Datganiad am Cyflymu Cymru.
Wel, o ran argaeledd band eang cyflym iawn, mae Cymru eisiau yn arwain y ffordd ymhlith y gwledydd datganoledig. Erbyn hyn, mae 79% o eiddo'n gallu cael band eang cyflym iawn drwy'r raglen cyflymu Cymru a darpariaeth fasnachol.
Mae cyflwyno bandlydan cyflymu Cymru, wrth gwrs, wedi cael ei ohirio mewn rhai ardaloedd gwledig, ac mi ges i ohebiaeth gan eich llywodraeth chi oedd yn cadarnhau, a dwi'n dyfynnu, that the resources are needed to focus on higher yielding numbers of premises. Ond ydyw hynny'n profi o dan eich llywodraeth chi pan mae'n dod i gyflwyno bandlydan fod cymunedau gwledig ar waelod yr restr?
Wel, so hwnna yn wir, bydde cymunedau fel Gwernogle, enghraifft, ddim yn cael band eang. Byddwn ni'n mynd sefyllfa lle bydde pentrefi gwledig heb unrhyw band eang o gwbl. Ni'n gwybod yn net, ser farchnad yn rheoli hwn, bydd ddim band eang o gwbl, tu fas i band tenau yn y de a band yn y gogledd. So felly ni wedi ariannu band eang. Ni'n gweld llawer iawn o ardaloedd gwledig nawr gyda band eang cyflym iawn. 79%, mae hwnna'n uchel iawn i gymharu â gwledydd eraill yn Ewrop, a nodi wrth gwrs cyrraedd y targed o 96% o dan y cynllun cyflymu Cymru.
Nick Ramsey.
First Minister, there have been concerns about the value for money of Superfast Cymru. Yes, those areas that it have reached are getting the service that they need, but there are large areas, rural areas particularly, that Leah Griffith mentioned, which aren't getting the service which they would expect. Do you think there's been an over-reliance on the fibre-to-cabinet technology, and would the Welsh Government look at ways of perhaps providing more innovative solutions to rural hotspots?
There will need to be innovative solutions. There are some areas where fibre to cabinet won't work. They will need they will need solutions such as satellite connections. We know that 4% will be very difficult, if not impossible, to reach via Superfast Cymru. When the member said he questioned the value of Superfast Cymru, I don't know whether he means he doesn't agree with it, but certainly what we have seen is a rollout of broadband to areas of Wales that would never have had broadband if it wasn't for the proactive work carried out by Welsh Government.
Elaine Parrott.
Diolch Llywydd. First Minister, it seems to me that one of the persisting problems in the Superfast Cymru project has been that interrelationship between the Superfast Cymru rollout and the commercial rollout, particularly in the behaviour of BT in a market where they are a government-sponsored wholesaler, a commercial wholesaler and a retailer operating in the same market. The result has been that residents in places such as Penlan and Pengan Green in Cardiff have been left hanging for a decision as to whether they'll be released from BT's commercial programme into Superfast Cymru, suffering speeds of as little as half a meg per second in some instances, for years now without actually having a resolution. Wouldn't you agree actually that there is a conflict of interests here which is an issue, and that I'm just wondering if the Welsh Government have got some controls in that contract that allows them to monitor the commercial activity of BT whilst they are delivering this programme alongside their own work?
Penlan has a particular technical problem for some reason in Cardiff, where there's an issue with connection to the exchange that makes it look like a rural area when in fact it's in the middle of Cardiff. And there are issues surrounding Penlan, particularly that she's referred to, that will need to be resolved by BT, given the fact that Penlan, in exchange terms, is almost a rural area. Then clearly BT will need to make a decision very quickly as to whether it's seen as part of the commercial rollout or whether it's part of Superfast Cymru. But we have ensured that we can get best value for money out of Superfast Cymru, that we are not subsidising what the market would otherwise deliver, and that's not what Superfast Cymru is designed to achieve, of course. But she is right about Penlan. There's a particular technical issue that exists there that will need to be resolved.
Question 6, William Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement about the Welsh Government's input into Velathon Wales 2016?
Yes, following delivery of a safe and successful event, the Welsh Government commissioned a full and independent review to address the issues that were raised. Taking account of that review, we are engaged in detailed discussions with the event organisers and the relevant local authorities ahead of a final decision regarding next year's event.
I thank the First Minister for his reply. I'm grateful to him also for previous replies on this subject. What I would ask today was, would he publish in time a detailed timetable of engagement with those people likely to be affected, or whether there's necessity still for full road closure, or whether rolling road closure would be more appropriate. It is essential that this work is carried out as soon as possible, so that next year's Velathon is a real world-beating event for Wales.
Well, this is a matter primarily for the organisers, but I do take on board what he says. It is important that people are aware of what the plans are long before the event takes place, we will look to ensure that the organisers do just that.
Lindsay Whittle.
First Minister, we're assured that this year's Velathon in Wales generated a lot of income for South East Wales and for charity. A little bit of controversy as well, of course. Much as I support extra income coming to South East Wales, to be fair, what efforts will the Welsh Government make to direct the Velathon to different regions of Wales to generate additional income there?
Well, the Velathon, of course, will look at where it wants to go. It's its choice as to which part of Wales it goes to. Of course, it's right to say that as a government we would then look to support that. We know that a number of events that take place all across Wales that we support as a government, from the Llŷn Peninsula down to Pembrokeshire, through Breconshire, and of course in the southeast and northeast as well. If there is an opportunity for the Velathon to go elsewhere in Wales, that's something, of course, we'd look to explore with them.
Question 7, Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's house building targets?
Well, we're seeing good progress on house building across all tenures. We delivered 6,890 affordable homes in the first 3 years of this administration against our target of 10,000, and we will be able to announce further progress towards this target shortly.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. On the 21st of September, your Minister for Communities issued a statement in which she outlined the housing supply pact between the Welsh Government and the Home Builders Federation, and amongst the commitments for the Welsh Government was to identify the most important barriers to private housing supply in Wales. I met with a number of small house builders yesterday in my own region, and they raised a number of issues with me, including the cost of publicly owned land, the difficulty of accessing finance, the fact that solicitors' fees are very expensive, particularly in terms of local authority searches, and the failure of statutory undertakers to work together, and the excessive charges which they impose on small builders. Can I ask you what aspect of those particular problems are being addressed as part of this pact?
Well, there are some issues there that can't be addressed by government, solicitors' fees being one of them. With regard to statutory undertakers, of course, where we once had 3 in Wales, namely the Forestry Commission, CCW, and of course the Environment Agency, we now have 1, which should streamline the process in terms of the necessary consents. Again, in terms of the price of publicly owned land, much of it depends on who owns it, of course. Some of it might be Welsh Government land, some of it might be land owned by local authorities. But I do understand that the finances have to add up for small builders before they make that kind of investment. What I can say is that we do have a House Builders Engagement Programme. It was established to, I use that dreaded word, engage with house builders and industry representatives from across the private sector, and to identify issues that were a problem for them. It does include developers operating in Wales and the industry representative bodies. So if there are difficulties, I would encourage small builders to raise their concerns via that forum as well.
Jonathan Saunders.
Presiding Officer. First Minister, following the Welsh Government consultation earlier this year on the LDP plan process review and publication of the new LDP regulations, will you outline the timetable for the publication of the revised LDP manual that is now overdue?
Well, that's something that we are working on, of course, but we expect local authorities to produce their LDPs in good time. There are some local authorities that have not done that. That adds to huge confusion for developers and to the general public, and it also means that it becomes very difficult for people to understand what land is going to be used for over a 10-year period. The irony of the legislation for many years was that when it came to development plans, there was a requirement for local authorities to produce such plans, whether it was structure plans for counties, local plans for the borough authorities, subsequently, of course, UDPs and LDPs, but no sanction if plans were not produced. Ceredigion, if I remember, didn't have a plan for, well, if it ever had a plan, but certainly didn't have a plan for many, many years. The upshot was that developers didn't know whether they get planning permission. The planning system was capricious because there were no established guidelines, and we expect local authorities to follow the established guidelines as we look to see whether there is a need to review those that already exist.
Question 8, Gwenda Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on actions taken by the Welsh Government to note International Older Persons Day?
Well, the Welsh Government provides funding for the Older People's Commissioner and Older People's Strategy Coordinators. A number of events were held across Wales, including the Say No to Ageism campaign that was launched by the Commissioner.
Thank you for that response, First Minister. I'm sure you share my concern that a third of older people in Wales have experienced some form of ageism. What is the Welsh Government doing to recognise the role of older people in Wales, and in particular older carers?
Well, I mean, as a government, we value the contribution of older people. We know that they make up a substantial number of volunteers in the community who do a lot of good work. We know, and I am somebody who knows this personally, the help they give to young families in terms of childcare. And so we know older people are there to help younger people and to pass on their experience. What do we do in order to help carers? We have the carers strategy, of course. We have the commitment set out in the older people's strategy. And in July 2014, we issued the Declaration of Rights for Older People in Wales. That's very clear about what is expected of public services in Wales to ensure older people receive the support and services that they need, whilst, of course, ensuring their dignity and rights are protected.
Darren Miller.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I want to also put on record my support for the Older People's Commissioner's campaign, Say No to Ageism. I think everybody in this chamber would agree that ageism has no place in 21st century Wales. But of course, the Office of the Older People's Commissioner is an extremely important part of holding government and public authorities to account for their delivery against those rights for older people that we quite rightly enshrined in Welsh law. Given that, what assurances can you provide to the Chamber today that the Older People's Commissioner's budget will not be cut in your forthcoming budget settlement?
Well, let's see what your party provides us with in the spending review, shall we? And then we can have a further discussion on this. Look, the Older People's Commissioner will have a budget that's appropriate in order for the duties of the Commissioner to be discharged. We understand that. We have a very good record when it comes to supporting older people, whether it's the establishment of the Commissioner, through to the strategy, through to the carers strategy. But let's wait and see what kind of support the UK government is willing to give to Welsh older people.
Lindsay Whittle.
First Minister, in your draft equality objectives published in July, you outlined wanting to tackle differences in employment between various groups and parts of society. Do you agree that a particularly hard place to be is over 50 and unemployed or recently redundant? How do you plan to put meat on the bones of your equality plans to ensure that older people have equal access to employment opportunities, please?
Well, through training, I mean, it's been the case for some time that people over 50 have found it difficult to get employment, particularly when they've been in long-term employment in a particular job. We saw that when the mining industry was wrecked. We saw that with the mass redundancies amongst the steelworkers in the 1980s. We are moving to an era where people need to have training on a regular basis throughout their lives. We talk about lifelong learning. We've done that in terms of making sure that people have access to that lifelong learning and to that training. But above all, employers know if they have older people, they have people who are used to the disciplines of work, who can offer the benefit of experience, and particularly, of course, the ability to train those younger in the disciplines needed in the workforce.
Question 9, Bethan Jenkins.
Will the First Minister make a statement on how long public services providers should take to respond to complaints?
Well, public service providers in Wales have their own individual complaints procedures, but the Ombudsman recommends that providers adopt the model complaints policy, which suggests complaints are considered within 20 working days. Some complaints, of course, will take longer because of their complexity.
Thank you for that response. I wrote to the ambulance service on behalf of a constituent in June. Her daughter had 7 epileptic fits in a local park. A rapid response paramedic called code red, but it took the ambulance an hour to arrive from Porth to Glynneath, where there is an ambulance station. When they rang my office to update me last week, some 3 months after my letter, we were told that a draft response had been compiled. Finally, furthermore, the service is experiencing a backlog of complaints, they tell me, and that they had prioritised my complaint because I was an Assembly member. Does the First Minister agree that this is an unacceptable amount of time for my constituent to wait for an answer over this poor service? And what is his government doing about ensuring that people who contact public services have a response in a timely fashion?
Well, it's very difficult to comment on an individual complaint, given the fact that she has knowledge that I don't have access to. Nevertheless, she raises, of course, an important issue. If I could ask her to write to the Health Minister, I'm sure then she will get a detailed response.
Andrew Archie Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Obviously, handling a complaint in a sensitive and timely manner is of critical importance when patients find that they have an issue, and it can help mitigate some of the circumstances that led to the complaint in the first place if the answer's dealt with timely. Abertawe Bro Morgannwg did have a pretty lamentable record in dealing with complaints procedures, but what is your assessment, First Minister, of health boards across Wales in the way they are dealing with complaints, and more importantly, the resource that they put into dealing with those complaints, because very often they're seen as the Cinderella part of the service that they have to deliver?
Well, they're not, for any number of reasons. I think part of the problem is that there's been a tendency in the past for LHBs, indeed all public authorities, to treat a complaint as a potential legal action. And that, of course, then kicks off a very formal process. And, of course, for most people, they're not interested in legal action. They're not interested in compensation. They want an explanation or an apology where things go wrong. And so we encourage LHBs to take a more informal approach to dealing with complaints where that is appropriate, particularly where people just don't want to go down that line. In terms of ABMU, he is right to say, for example, the Princess of Wales Hospital, there was a time that its complaints record was not up to the required standard. That has changed. We've seen that ABMU had the largest reduction of complaints in 2014 to 15, partly due to the deployment of a patient advice and liaison service. And they are dealing with a greater number of informal concerns at source. So instead of standing back and thinking this is bound to end up in court, there's a proactive approach to make sure that people's complaints are dealt with in a timely and appropriate manner.
Question 10, Jeff Cuthbert.
Will the First Minister make a statement on renewable energy policy in Wales?
Yes, our policies are set out in Energy Wales, a low-carbon transition and planning policy Wales, and the further written statement in June and the publication in July of Green Growth Wales, Local Energy, explain our vision for future energy systems in Wales and the key role of renewable energy.
Can I thank you for that response, First Minister? And I am pleased that the Welsh Government takes a much more positive attitude towards this matter than the Conservative UK Government, which increasingly seems to be turning its back on renewable energy, not content with cutting the feed-in tariff rates for small-scale solar panel installations. Only last week we heard about how DEC is dragging its feet about the funding that is due to provide to the proposed Swansea Bay tidal lagoon. First Minister, will you agree with me that given Wales is surrounded on three sides by seawater, tidal energy is something to be explored as fully as possible? And do you agree with me that in terms of the Irish Sea, we should seek to work closely with the Irish Government and higher education institutions so that there can be a maximum sharing of ideas and expertise?
Well, the difficulty is the UK government seem to have no idea what their energy policy is. And I hear this from developers themselves. They just want to know what's happening. They want some certainty. They know that solar panels have had their subsidies cut. They know the feed-in tariffs have been cut. They know onshore wind is not in favour with the UK government. There's no strike price on the tidal lagoon. We've seen the money that's had to be made available with regard to Hinkley in terms of that being able to proceed. There needs to be far more certainty than this. From our point of view, you're quite right that there's tremendous potential for marine energy resources around Wales. Great potential not just to create energy, but to create jobs as well. But at the moment, everything's being delayed because of the lack of agreement over a strike price, and that's down to the fact that there's a completely directionless position at the moment that's been exhibited by the UK government.
George.
Declaring interest as a Powys County Councillor. First Minister, last month the UK Government announced the outcome of the conjoined public inquiry on the Mid Wales Connection project and wind farms. In contrast to what your government has said, it's not a decision made in Westminster, it is a victory for local democracy, as the UK Government upheld the original decision of the local representatives of Powys County Council. Now, as powers are devolved to the Welsh Government, will you ensure that decisions are made as close as possible to local people?
Well, the decision wasn't taken by the local authority, nor can it be, given the current settlement with regard to planning and energy. I mean, it's a hypothetical question, as he knows full well, and we want to see energy devolved. It's something, in fairness, the UK Government has not objected to. But it does rather make the point that I made many times to him and others, that this wasn't a matter for the Welsh Government, it was a matter for the UK Government. And people were protesting outside this building. I said then, it's the UK Government who will take the final decision. That's what was the reality of it, and the issue of the Welsh Government and TAN8 was always a red herring.
David Harris Thomas.
Diolch yn fawr, fyna sy'n glywed yr wedi datgan diddordeb fel un sydd yn byw i genmed yr uwchlawr afon Conwy. Mae yna un hibi brif weinidog lai o frwdfrydedd y dyddiau yma tuag at ynni gwynt mewndirol ac hefyd tuag at ynni hydrocanolig. Ydy'r prif weinidog yn monitron ofalus beth sydd yn digwydd i'r agweddau yma o'r diwydiant, yn enwedig o ystyried effaith polisi cyllido a diffyg polisi cynllunio effeithlon Llywodraeth Deyrnas Unedig tuag at yr un sy'n digwydd.
A problem yw hwn, heb bod bobl yn gwybod beth yw'r strike price, mae'n anodd wedyn ni wrth gwrs i weld pa fath o beth yw'r model cyllidol ynglyn â buddsoddi. Mae'n broblem i bawb, bach ac yn mawr sydd eisiau buddsoddi yn rhwydwaith ynni yma yng Nghymru. Mae rhaid cael gweledigaeth ynglyn â'r ffordd ymlaen i Bryden Fawr. Dwi'n yn dynnu ar hyn o bryd. Mae rhaid i ni wybod beth yn gwmwys yw cynllun y Deyrnas Unedig. Heb hwnna, anodd iawn i ni felly fel Llywodraeth i ystyried beth yw'r ffordd ymlaen ynglyn â Cymru. O achos y ffaith bod ni'n mynd sefyllfa mor wahanol i'r ardal.
First Minister, we now move to item 2, which is a business statement announcement. I call